Hey guys, welcome to part 1 of What If Demonic Saiyan was in Death Note. I just rewatched Death Note and thought it would be interesting to make a what if on it. Without further ado, let's begin. Since I am a British citizen, if I were in Death Note, I would be born in London, England, to a supposedly normal family, and for this what if, my name would be Damien Saiyan. My childhood would be like any other, playing in the streets of London, attending school, and spending time with friends. Growing up in the vibrant city, I would have no inkling of the supernatural world lurking beneath the surface. As I approached my 18th birthday, life seemed to be following its usual rhythm. I was enjoying my youth, completely unaware of the existence of Shinagamis or the Death Note. Then, on that fateful day, something extraordinary happened. I was strolling through a park in central London when a black book suddenly fell from the sky, landing with a thud on the ground in front of me. At first, I thought it was a prank or perhaps a strange object dropped by a passing bird. However, as I got closer, I noticed strange symbols etched on its cover, and an ominous aura emanated from it. Curiosity overwhelmed me as I approached the mysterious book. With hesitant steps, I reached out and picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands. Uncertain of what I would find inside, I found a nearby bench and sat down, the book resting on my lap, its pages seemingly beckoning me to uncover its secrets. As I flipped through the pages, I came across a set of rules written in perfect English. Despite my confusion, I couldn't help but scoff at the notion that writing someone's name in this book could lead to their demise. It all seemed too unrealistic to be true. The rules were as follow: the human whose name is written in this note shall die. This note will not take effect unless the writer has the person's face in their mind when writing his/her name. Therefore, people sharing the same name will not be affected. If the cause of death is written within the next 40 seconds of writing the person's name, it will happen. If the cause of death is not specified, the person will simply die of a heart attack. After writing the cause of death, details of the death should be written in the next 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Still thinking the note was some elaborate prank to trick me, I would put the book in my bag and head home. Once there, I couldn't shake the curiosity gnawing at me. There was no harm in trying out the book, right? After all, there was no way it could be possible. Sitting at the kitchen table, I struggled to come up with a name. Then, the local news caught my attention on the TV, reporting a tragic stabbing incident that claimed the lives of 4 students. The attacker, identified as 36-year-old Jonathan Wilde, was being arrested and escorted out of the shop to a police car. It struck me that this would be the perfect test trial. His death would be broadcasted live, and it would confirm whether the Death Note's power was real or just a bizarre coincidence. With trembling hands, I picked up my pen and wrote his name. As the seconds ticked by, Jonathan, still resisting arrest, suddenly began to clutch at his chest in agony before collapsing to the ground. Shocked, I watched from the safety of my home as the news broadcasted his demise. But instead of feeling relief, a wave of guilt washed over me. Was I really responsible for his death? I denied that it was the book's power, convincing myself it was mere coincidence. But deep down, I knew the truth. Desperate to distract myself, I told my mother I needed to go to the shops, asking if she needed anything. With a quick shopping list in hand, I made my way to Tesco, trying to push the events of the day out of my mind. However, with each step, the weight of what I had done grew heavier. Was I justified in using the Death Note to test its power? And what would happen if I continued to use it? The line between right and wrong blurred, and I found myself grappling with a moral dilemma unlike any I had faced before. After purchasing my items and leaving the shop, I would start to walk home, the weight of the groceries in my arms making me walk a bit slower. As I turned the corner onto a dimly lit street, I would witness a disturbing scene unfolding before me. Two men were harassing a woman, trying to take advantage of her vulnerability. They were pulling her into a dark alley where help was unlikely to arrive. Instinctively, I would pull out my phone, ready to call the police. But then, a realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. I had the death note in my bag. My mind raced with possibilities, but I hesitated. I didn't fully understand the power of the death note, and the thought of using it to take someone's life filled me with uncertainty and dread. As I stood frozen in indecision, a third and fourth person appeared, blocking the entrance and exit of the alley, trapping me inside with the assailants. The two men would laugh, mocking my attempts to intervene. Their laughter turned to violence as they punched me to the ground and kicked me in the ribs, taunting me with their cruel intentions. Enraged and in pain, I would glare at the men, and suddenly, their names and a number would flash before my eyes, a countdown to their natural time of death. In a moment of reckoning, I would seize the opportunity. With trembling hands, I would write the name of one of the men in the death note, his cause of death as tripping on his own knife after killing the other three. As I wrote, the criminals would mock me, asking if I was doing my homework. But I would simply tell them to die. The situation would escalate as one of the criminals, David Madrid, would pull out a knife and stab the man beside him in the neck before turning the blade on the other two people. All while laughing maniacally. But his own fate would catch up to him, as he tripped over his feet and landed on his own blade, sealing his demise. Terrified, the woman would run away without looking back, screaming about a murder. Not wanting to get caught up with the police, I would hastily return home, putting the shopping away and telling my mother not to bother me since I had university homework to do. Locking myself in my room, I would try to push the events of the night out of my mind. Pulling out my phone and opening the camera, I would notice that my skin had become more pale, my hair more messy, my teeth sharper, and my eyes a crimson red. Believing it had something to do with the death note, I would think nothing of it, instead attempting to decide the best use of my newly found power. While attempting to research about the notebook online with a secure connection and a VPN enabled, I would delve deep into forums and obscure websites, hoping to uncover any information about its origin or potential dangers. It wouldn't take long before I stumbled upon references to a mysterious figure known as Kira. Deducing that Kira must possess the same abilities as me, and perhaps even more knowledge about the death note. I would become consumed with the idea of locating and meeting this enigmatic individual. With determination burning in my veins, I would scour the internet for any leads that could lead me to Kira's whereabouts. As I worked tirelessly to locate Kira, I would start to adopt their ideals, convinced that their methods were the most effective way to use our shared power. Inspired by Kira's mission to rid the world of evil, I would take it upon myself to become a vigilante of sorts, targeting violent criminals and bringing them to justice. Each day, I would meticulously compile a list of the most wanted criminals, scouring news articles and law enforcement databases for names and faces. With ruthless efficiency, I would execute my plan, eliminating 200 criminals a day in the name of justice. But I would not stop there. To ensure the safety of society and prevent any potential harm, I would also make it my mission to eradicate every sex offender across the globe. Their identities, often public information, would make them easy targets for my judgment. Despite my noble intentions, I would be acutely aware of the ethical dilemmas posed by my actions. Was it truly right for me to play judge, jury, and executioner? Was I justified in taking the lives of others, even if they were criminals? These questions would weigh heavily on my conscience as I continued my crusade against evil. However, I was prepared to condemn my soul to eternal damnation for true peace. Elsewhere, L would start to suspect the global deaths as the result of a second Kira, and he would begin working with the British police on the case. As he delved deeper into the investigation, L would employ the same tactics used to expose the original Kira. However, I had already learned from my research that there was a special broadcast in the Kanto region of Japan that was mistakenly believed to be global but was actually only local. This led to the deduction that Kira was from Kanto. With this knowledge in mind, I would ignore the broadcast in London and instead try to throw L off my trail by targeting the stand-in L when the broadcast was played in Cardiff, Wales. By diverting attention to a different location, I hoped to buy myself more time and evade detection. However, L's keen intellect and deductive prowess would not be easily fooled. After analyzing the concentration of killings and the location of the original murders, L would eventually deduce that the second Kira was located in London. By the time L narrowed down his suspicions, it would already be too late for him to intervene. I had already devised a plan to further obscure my identity and evade capture. I signed up for a Japanese student transfer program, allowing me to live in Kanto, Japan, under the guise of studying abroad. This strategic move would enable me to get closer to Kira and learn more about the Death Note. While L and the authorities scrambled to track down the elusive second Kira in London, I would be on the ground in Kanto, ready to seek out Kira and gain insight into the true nature of the Death Note. Meanwhile, Light Yagami had been well aware of the existence of a second Death Note user and found himself intrigued by the idea that someone else shared his ideals. He harbored a sense of satisfaction knowing that there was another individual out there who believed in the same cause he did. However, despite his desire to meet this unknown accomplice, he was at a loss as to how to make contact. While Light kept a watchful eye on the developments surrounding the second Kira, he remained focused on his own agenda. As the prime suspect in the Kira case, he continued his facade of innocence, all the while secretly manipulating events to suit his goals. The presence of the second Kira did little to deter Light from his mission. He remained committed to his vision of creating a utopian world free from crime and corruption, and he saw the second Kira as a potential ally in achieving that vision. In the pursuit of his goals, Light was ruthless in his actions. He orchestrated the deaths of the FBI agents in Japan, eliminating anyone who posed a threat to his plans. He also targeted Ray Penba's fiancée, further solidifying his position as Kira and ensuring that his true identity remained hidden from suspicion. Despite the chaos and uncertainty surrounding the emergence of the second Kira, Light saw it as an opportunity to further his ambitions. With two Death Note users working towards the same goal, he believed that together they could bring about a new world order where justice reigned supreme. On the 5th of April, 2004, I began my studies at the prestigious Toyo University in Tokyo. Despite considering it highly improbable that Kira was also a student there, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to be vigilant. As I walked through the campus on my first day, I kept a keen eye out for anyone who appeared different or out of place. The university was abuzz with activity, students chatting and laughing as they made their way to their classes. I listened intently to the speeches and introductions, trying to gauge the atmosphere and the people around me. Towards the end of the speeches, something caught my eye. Light Yagami, one of the students giving a speech, didn't have a time of death listed under his name. My heart skipped a beat as I realized the significance of this omission. Could Light Yagami be the original Kira? I discreetly observed Light, noting his behavior and appearance. He seemed composed and confident, blending in seamlessly with the rest of the crowd. But there was something about him that set him apart, a subtle hint of darkness lurking beneath the surface. Determined to investigate further, I made a mental note to keep an eye on Light Yagami and gather more information. While watching Light, I would notice a strange guy keeping an eye on him too. Remembering the dude's name from the speech, Hideki Ryuga, I found it strange that above his head, he had a completely different name. The discrepancy piqued my curiosity, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this Ryuga character. As I continued observing the two, I would notice Ryuga engaging in conversation with Light. Their interaction was intriguing, and I soon learned the most bizarre thing. This man was the legendary L, the master detective who had been hunting Kira. It was a shock to realize that the enigmatic L was right in front of me, disguised as a fellow student. Understanding that L isn't stupid, I knew that his decision to invite Light onto the Kira task force was strategic. It was a way for L to keep a close eye on his key suspect and gather more information about his activities. However, part of me couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. Could this man truly be the real L, or was it all an elaborate ruse? Despite my suspicions, I refused to take any drastic action without confirmation. Killing L without certainty could have dire consequences, especially if he turned out to be innocent. I needed more evidence before I could make a move. Just as I was contemplating my next steps, my attention was suddenly diverted by a bizarre sight. A flying monster with bluish-gray skin and abnormally long limbs hovered in the distance, its bulging yellow eyes with red irises sending shivers down my spine. Fear gripped me as I felt a cold sweat start to trickle down my neck. I struggled to maintain my composure, not wanting to draw attention to myself. Pretending to tie my shoelaces, I took a few deep breaths to steady my nerves before calmly walking away from the scene. The encounter left me shaken and unsettled. The revelation of L's true identity, coupled with the appearance of the strange creature, raised more questions than answers. I knew I had to tread carefully in this dangerous game of cat and mouse, where the stakes were higher than ever before. Once Light got home, Ryuk would tell Light that someone had somehow seen him. Shocked, Light would ask Ryuk how that is even possible, but Ryuk said it's only possible if he touched the Death Note or is a Shinigami himself. Seeing this person as a threat, Light would ask Ryuk for a description of the person so he could learn his name and kill him. On the 7th of April, I would watch the tennis match between Light and Ryuga. After the match, I would approach Light and ask if I could talk to him, seeking some help with some work since he scored 100% on the entrance exams. Recognizing me from Ryuk's description, Light would agree, suggesting we go to a cafe where we could talk privately. Once there, I would pull out a test and point at a question on page 7, asking Light for help. Flipping to the page, Light would see a note, and his eyes would widen in surprise. The note would contain a cryptic message, hinting at my knowledge of the Death Note and my intentions. Light would realize that I must be the second Kira, and he would quickly assess the situation. His mind would race as he considered his options, knowing that he couldn't afford to underestimate me. But he would also see an opportunity to further his own plans and manipulate me to his advantage. Maintaining his composure, Light would subtly steer the conversation, probing for more information about my motives and goals. He would feign innocence, pretending to be intrigued by the note and eager to assist me in any way he could. Meanwhile, I would watch Light closely, gauging his reactions and trying to anticipate his next move. The tension between us would be palpable as we danced around the truth, each of us carefully guarding our secrets while subtly trying to outmaneuver the other. As I slipped a crude drawing of Ryuk across the table and asked Light what it was, his eyes would widen in surprise. Sensing an opportunity, Light would feign ignorance, asking me if I didn't have one. Nodding my head, I would respond, saying that I didn't understand, as I had never seen it before. Light would then seize the moment, covertly scribbling a response on a piece of paper as if answering a school question. He would explain that the drawing depicted Ryuk, the Shinigami who gave him his Death Note. I would glance at the note, pretending to read it with curiosity, before nodding and saying that it makes more sense now. Just as our conversation took this intriguing turn, Light's phone would suddenly ring. He would glance at the caller ID, his expression tensing as he realized it was Elle answering the call. Light would hear Elle's urgent voice on the other end, informing him that his father had collapsed due to stress and was in the hospital. The news would shock both of us, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Light would quickly apologize and excuse himself, his mind racing with concern for his father. I would nod sympathetically, understanding the seriousness of the situation, and watch as Light hurriedly left the cafe to rush to the hospital. Alone at the table, I would carefully fold the drawing of Ryuk and tuck it into my pocket, my thoughts swirling with the revelation of Light's connection to the Shinigami. After getting home, I made sure to maintain my cover by carrying out my usual routine of killing British criminals. It was crucial that Elle still believed I was in London. The next day, I decided to visit Light's house, armed with a basket of fruits, mostly apples. Opening the door, I was greeted by Light's sister, Saiyan. Introducing myself, I explained that I was an exchange student at the same university as her brother and was seeking some help with my Japanese, as I had only started learning the language 5 months ago. Despite this, all of this was said in perfect fluent Japanese. Heading up to Light's room, I placed the basket on his desk and asked if I could speak to Ryuk, to which Light agreed. Picking up one of the apples and peeling it while I talked, I casually asked Ryuk how likely it is to receive a death note without a Shinigami appearing. Ryuk, grabbing an apple himself, replied that he wasn't sure, but Shinigamis sometimes drop their death notes without realizing it, so they don't come down to the human world straight away. As I observed Ryuk eating, I commented on how juicy the apples were. Ryuk agreed, indulging in the fruit. He then remarked that it was unusual that he couldn't see his name or lifespan, jokingly asking if he was the Shinigami to whom the death note belonged to. Confused by this, I asked Ryuk if it was possible for a human and Shinigami to procreate together. However, Ryuk didn't know and stated that nobody had ever tried such a thing before, saying the idea sounded disgusting and unfathomable at best. After some light-hearted banter, Light would shift the conversation back to business. He would reveal that he is the main suspect of the Kira investigation and is now working with the Kira task force to hunt down Kira in an attempt to learn the identity of Elle. Light would explain that if I ever received a message to take notes for him, it meant that he was unable to perform Kira's will, and I would have to step in and take over his part. Agreeing to this arrangement, I would express my confusion, asking Light why he didn't just look at the name above Ryuga's head to confirm his identity. Light, also confused, would ask me what I was talking about. Ryuk would then explain the Shinigami ideal, which allows the Death Note owner to see people's names and lifespans in return for half of their own lifespan. I would then state that I had never made the deal since I didn't have a Shinigami, but Ryuk wouldn't have any other explanation. After learning about the deal, Light would refuse it, asserting that the new world would need its god, and it wasn't worth the sacrifice. Curious, Light would ask what the name above L's head was. However, I would smirk and refuse to tell him, claiming that it would ruin the fun of the hunt, since I wanted to see his deduction skills in action. Accepting the challenge, Light would shake my hand, agreeing to create the new world together. After my conversation with Light, I would thank Saiyan, Light's little sister, for having me over and wish for their father to have a speedy recovery. With a polite nod and a smile, I would bid her farewell and make my way out of the house. On the 18th of April, as I turned on the TV to Sakura TV, a disturbing tape appeared, with a mechanically scrambled voice claiming that a major television anchor with a history of minor scandals would die at that very moment. Quickly changing the channel, I would witness the on-air death. More TV personalities fell victim as the tape continued to play. Kira's message accompanying the deaths was clear: he was doing this to gain support and prove his powers. Realizing that this was unlikely to be the work of Light, I quickly got on my bike and rode to the area around Sakura TV headquarters. Finding a nearby tall building, I took the lift to get a bird's-eye view of the unfolding events. From my vantage point, I watched as a police who attempted to enter the building to prevent the tape's broadcast had dropped dead. Thinking the spectacle was over, I turned to leave. However, my attention was drawn back as an ambulance suddenly crashed into Sakura TV. Shocked, I watched as multiple police trucks surrounded the entrance, and hundreds of officers poured out, creating a wall around the building. Despite the police wearing face coverings, I began to write the names of the officers in my death note as they collapsed one by one, until the formation was broken, revealing that the man who crashed into Sakura TV was Light's father. I hesitated to write his name in my book, allowing him to escape. On the 22nd of May, I joined Light and some of our other university friends to locate the third Kira in Aoyama. Light deduced that the third Kira wanted to meet at a club called Note Blue. However, Misa Amain, disguised with the Shinigami eyes, was actually in a coffee shop nearby and discovered Light Yagami's real name as he and Matsuda passed by, as those in possession of a death note do not have their lifespans shown by the eyes. She also noticed that there was no name or lifespan above my head, raising suspicions about my identity. I decided to approach Misa discreetly. Pretending to be thirsty, I entered the cafe where Misa was sitting and bought an apple and a cup of bubble tea, sitting at the table behind her. Using a flipper, I hacked into her phone and sent her an anonymous message, instructing her not to turn around or make any sudden moves. I informed her that I wasn't Kira, but I worked with him, and we wanted her cooperation. I promised to call her later. Getting up, I would thank the girl working at the till, complimenting the juiciness of the apples. After exiting the cafe, I caught up with Light and continued to explore the area with the group. At the end of the day, I walked home with Light, handing him a burner phone with Misa's and my phone numbers in it. Later that day, I called Misa, warning her not to save the number as it was a burner phone, and all traces of the call would be deleted. I instructed her to send a message back to the fake Kira, claiming to have been disappointed not to have managed to make contact, to throw off the police. However, Elle remained skeptical of the message. On the 25th of May, while I was at Light's house, Misa arrived, claiming to go to school with him and that he left a notebook there. Light went over to meet her, and Misa let him touch her death note, allowing him to see REM and realize her identity. He then invited her inside, pretending that Misa was his girlfriend, a guise he already used to cover up his involvement with the task force. Misa explained about the Shinigami eyes, then offered to be Light's eyes if he made her his girlfriend. Light became suspicious, wondering why Misa would surrender herself to him. Misa told Light that she had been more careful than he previously thought, covering her tracks using disguises and letting other people put their fingertips all over the packages in which she sent the tapes. Light remained cautious because she had the power to kill him. However, Misa offered to give Light her notebook so that he could ensure she wouldn't kill him, and she could gain his trust. She told him that she didn't mind if he used her and even if he killed her if she became a burden. Misa explained that Kira was like a god to her because he killed the criminals who killed her parents. She was willing to do anything for Light. Misa started to get upset and cry, so Light hugged her to comfort her. Finally, Light agreed to let her help him and pretend to be her boyfriend because he could use her as a valuable weapon to kill Elle. Misa accepted his offer, eager to assist him in his mission. When she accepts on the condition that Light date her, he threatens to kill her if she does not obey his orders. In return, REM threatens to write Light's name in her death note if any harm comes to Misa, even though saving Misa will kill her. Light is stuck in the position of having to protect Misa and see her regularly. To make matters more complicated, he discovers that she is a famous model. Light asks REM to kill L, to which she agrees. However, Light has to decide whether or not he wants to kill him the very next day, so he tells her to wait until he gives the order. Light then asks Misa for her number, but doesn't want hers because the police could track her phone. To comply, Misa gives Light one of her 3 phones, and Light agrees, but says that only he can make the call, which will probably be tomorrow. He then tells Misa to go home, but she tries pressing on with romance. To make her comply, Light kisses her, causing Misa to leave in a trance-like state. The next day, Elle appears at the university and interrupts Light's date with Kiyomi. He tells Light that if he dies in the next few days, it would mean that Light is Kira, so he figured it would be safe for him to come here and hang out with Light. While Light ponders his next move, the two go to have shortcake. Just as they depart, Misa shows up after having finished a photo shoot, to Light's dismay. Misa finds out L's real name with the help of her Shinigami eyes, which Light realizes, giving him the perfect opportunity to find out L's name. To his surprise, however, L starts snickering, and soon professes, along with a huge ton of students, to be fans of Misa's work. In the ensuing crowd, L gropes Misa's butt, then pretends it was someone else. When Misa is forcefully taken away by one of her agents, Light attempts to call her cell phone after excusing himself to the restroom, but finds out, to his horror, that L had stolen Misa's phone. Light promptly offers to go return it, and after taking the phone tries to call the third. However, L's own phone rings, and he reveals to Light after it that Misa has been arrested based on DNA evidence from the Sakura TV tapes, using her agent possessing drugs as an alibi. Light remains undeterred, however. Misa is taken into an underground compound, with her eyes covered by a metal plate, her body wrapped in isolation room material, and her body strapped to a vertical cot, all while REM looks on. The others are horrified but decide it is the right thing. L then informs Soikyo that, because of Light's phone call, he is now the prime suspect as Kira. 3 days later, Misa starts talking about wanting L to kill her, but refuses to confess. It is revealed, however, that she is not talking to L, but REM. When REM refuses to comply, Misa tries to bite her tongue and bleed out, but Futari gags her before she can. REM quickly realizes that the only way to calm Misa is to make her forfeit her Death Note, which would cause her to lose all of her memories of the Death Note, Kira, and Shinigami, as well as eliminate her Shinigami eyes. Misa is initially adverse to this, but agrees when REM says that her memories of Light being her boyfriend would remain. Her body goes slack, and she sheds a tear. Barely able to part with the human she loves, REM gently brushes a strand of hair on her hairline, which L notices. Several hours later, REM tells all this to Light, Me, and Ryuk, the former of which had made a deal with REM to break her out. At a misty forest, Light relinquishes ownership of REM's Death Note, but retains his memories because he still owns Ryuk's, which he buried in the forest. As REM leaves, Light tells Ryuk that if he says get rid of it he wants to relinquish ownership of the Death Note. Meanwhile, Misa regains consciousness, and with the new loss of memory, she starts to think she has been kidnapped by a stalker and tries appealing to him. This puzzles the others, since Mogi, who arrested her, made it clear that she was a suspect for being the second Kira, and she didn't even struggle. Elle tries to ask her stuff, but she remains ignorant, thinking that a stalker knocked her out, and even openly admits that Light is her boyfriend. Light then comes to meet with the task force, and decides to tell Elle that he thinks that he may somehow be Kira subconsciously as he was investigated by Ray Penba, was in Aoyama, met Misa Amain. and occasionally wishes to have some people die, and wishes to be solitarily confined. Light's father is vehemently adverse to this, but L agrees. After the first day, Soikyo also believes it is a good idea that he himself is confined to a cell, as he can't risk his emotions getting the better of him in this investigation. L complies, but allows for him to have full contact with the outside world. Okay guys, this is where I will be ending the first part of What If Demonic Saiyan Was in Death Note. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. With that out the way, this is Demonic Saiyan saying bye.